and welcome back to this week's edition of the Warwick F1 show. The song below kind of gave a hint about what we're going to be talking about today, as pretty much all the topics has a lot of money involved with it. So it's the first non-race edition since we've actually come back to the studio. And I thought it might be just a good idea just to go over pretty much every single piece of news that we've missed out since June, because we've had basically a lot of big news, controversies, and everything in between, from the cost cap breaches we just had over the last week or so. We've had massive driving market changes for 2023, possibly the silliest season we've ever had, you can probably say. We got the 2023 calendar, which didn't sit well with a lot of F1 fans, let's just say, especially with the addition of 6 sprint races, which is also, let's say, polarized opinion quite a lot. And also we had 2 manufacturers, one successfully and one unsuccessfully, making their way into F1, with VW's 2 divisions of Audi and Porsche, with Audi obviously confirmed to be an engine supplier for 2026 onwards, and Porsche's deal with Red Bull not falling through, unfortunately. But to discuss all of this news, I can't do this alone, so I'll introduce my guests. So, first of all, the ever-defendable Encyclopedia of F1, my co-host Kingswood.
I don't know how I feel about that, because it doesn't make me sound like a bit of a nerd, but then it might also be true, so I've got to deal with it.
Well, you do know a lot, so...
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of news that's come out. Red Bull budget cap has been the biggest one. I think we're still waiting to see. I love that the FIA sort of just announced it and then dipped from any conversations over the last week. Might not have been the best decision for them.
Yeah. We got 2 new people coming as well. The first one is Inni. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Super excited to be on. Very interesting topic to be featuring on this podcast for. But yeah, it should be fairly interesting. And I guess we'll just have to kind of see where all this kind of silly season kind of ends up being. At the end of the day, we're going to have a very enthralling 24 race calendar next year amidst all of this coming in the middle of it as well. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, and would you like to tell everyone who you support in Formula 1, if that's all right?
So I've had a pretty shocking year as a pretty hardcore Ferrari fan. It's been a tough 13, 14 years in the sport for me, but all hope for next season. We'll come back even stronger, and Mattia Binotto, I have full faith in the man that he will lead us to that elusive world championship one day.
Hopefully. It's been a painful year, and if you're not a Ferrari fan, it's just been too painful for everybody to watch Ferrari this season, unfortunately. And we also have the treasurer of the F1 Society making his debut, Sailesh. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing good. It's great to be on the podcast. Big fan of it, and I'd love to join. A lot of interesting news about the cost cap and the 24 race calendar, and I'm just really excited to get down and talk with everyone.
Yeah, and who do you support? If you don't mind me asking?
I'm a Vettel fanboy. The first race I watched, India 2011. Yeah, got into F1, been a fan throughout, and just so sad he's retired, but he's always number one.
Yeah, unfortunately it's not a nice year for everyone, with Vettel and Ricciardo retiring as well. So, Ricciardo not retiring, but you can almost say this is a sort of early retirement for the time being.
Basically posted it out.
Because, so yeah. So let's get straight into it. We'll start with the first news that we missed from the summer break, with the driver markets, because we can say this year has been interesting, to say at the very least, especially with one driver, with Oscar Piastri just making possibly the biggest bombshell with entering the F1 grid possibly we've ever seen in at least recent years. And it all just started with simply Sebastian Vettel out of nowhere getting an Instagram. So what I'll basically do, I'll just give everyone the quick rundown of the whole timeline, because it's just good to give a little bit of context. So I'll start with July the 27th. Vettel gets Instagram, pretty much shocked everybody, and we were all looking forward. And then we go to the next day, announced in the morning, it's Sebastian Vettel announcing his retirement. So that was a bit of a not very nice first thing to post on the Instagram for at least all the Vettel fanboys like me and Sai.
I mean, considering everyone thought it was going to be about bees or some kind of sustainability project.
Everyone thought it would be
first time in social media.
No,
announces retirement.
I hereby announce my retirement from the 2020.
I haven't even watched the video. It's too sad.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to watch
Vettel
sad, black and white.
But, you know, I mean, I'll just quickly go. I mean, what were your initial reactions to the F1 for the F1 retirement of one of the greats of the sport with Sebastian Vettel?
I mean, I feel like it did feel like it was coming. Vettel's, I think, not had that drive. I'm comparing it to basically Alonso, and Alonso feels like he could drive until he's a pensioner at this rate. But Vettel obviously has that family aspect, and I think that's something he emphasised a lot in his message, and I think that's completely fair that he would maybe want to call it a day, because he's 34, 35 now?
I think, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's fairly old. He's had an exceptionally successful career, obviously right at the start of it, to a lesser extent with Ferrari as well. And he's one of the most successful drivers of all time, so I don't think there's anything left sort of for him to do in the sport.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's more of he was the one that I kind of grew up watching him. Hamilton, Alonso, and Raikkonen was on the grid as well. They were kind of like the quartet I kind of grew up following and going through. And for me, he'll always be sporting the number one. As much as Max Verstappen wears it, for me, the iconic number one with Vettel will never go amiss. But I think, picking up on that point, Alonso's kind of a little bit of a machine at the moment in terms of man's like, 42? Something a bit more than that. And he's still going strong. But I think, with Vettel, all his other commitments going on. And I think he's taken it at the right time, especially with the uncertainty surrounding Aston Martin's future, which I'm sure we'll get onto later regarding how that one's going down. But also in terms of the fact that ever since, I guess, Hockenheim 2018, I don't think he's ever been the same driver since then. Always been here or there. But at the end of the day, 4 consecutive world championships, 43 race wins, multiple podiums, third successful driver of all time. Can't really go wrong there. It's a pretty established career.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always a Vettel fan, so number 5 for life. I think ever since he joined Aston Martin, he sort of drifted. Well, he's pivoted away from the sport towards sustainability. He's sort of a period question time, and he's really advocating sustainability and fossil fuel eradication. And so I feel like it sort of juxtaposes his position within the sport, which is why I felt like that contributed towards his retirement. Yeah. And overall, I think he's achieved everything in the sport, and I think he's happy to leave it as it is.
Yeah, no, I think the best bit about the retirement is possibly that he's ending it on his own terms.
Yeah.
He's he hasn't been kicked out of a team, fair enough. His time at Aston Martin hasn't been as successful as he wanted, but he didn't have an absolute stinker over 2 years with Aston Martin, and that's. He's choosing when to retire, which is the main thing.
But it means Lance Stroll has made another teammate retire. Lance Stroll is going to be the only thing that gets Fernando Alonso to retire at this point.
The thing is, he's been lucky because he's had people like Mazepin and Latifi in the sport, so now next year could be back to the Stroll hating again. But he's going to be in the sport for many years to come, unfortunately, because of his dad. But unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. So let's see how it goes. So we'll kind of move on with the timeline to put one of the most shocking aspects of the entire thing, where Fernando Alonso seemingly decides that Alpine isn't the team that he wanted to end his career with, or at least continue his career with, and he jumps ships to Aston Martin to replace Sebastian Vettel, which is kind of a downgrade in such a way, especially with the way Aston Martin's been performing compared to Alpine. I mean, what did he think about when he heard that?
It's interesting because at some points this season that Alpine hasn't actually been that far away from being the third quickest car on the grid, and especially if they'd had better reliability, I think that's the thing that's kept them unstuck this season. They'd be far ahead of McLaren, I think, for 4th place in the constructors. So it does feel like a downgrade, especially with how much, I guess, Aston Martin have spent and then not had maybe I think they're performing better now. They think easily got the 5th or 5th or 6th fastest car, but it does feel like a little bit of a downgrade based on where the two teams are currently at this season.
And it seems that Alonso has a reputation for making these sort of downgraded and not very good career decisions. I mean, when he returned to Renault after the whole McLaren Spygate scandal in 2007, where, the Renault in 2008 onwards was only a midfield car, then he did move to Ferrari, it went almost being a good move for him, but I don't think we want to go over the pain for those 4 years for uni. But then afterwards he moves to McLaren, where he joins just in time to McLaren completely Honda. Disappear from the front of the grid with McLaren Honda, and then obviously now with this move to Aston Martin. Do you think he's just been unlucky, or has he just really made bad decisions over his career?
I think when you put it like that, I mean, Fernando Alonso isn't exactly a stupid man, let's put it that way. I think he has become a little bit unlucky in some sorts, which kind of made me question why he's moving to Aston Martin in the first place. Judging by his track record, obviously, as you mentioned, his moves haven't been the most successful, so maybe this is a continuation of that, or maybe he could break the cycle, but it genuinely seems, at least this time, he's put a lot of faith into Aston Martin as a team, especially with their new Silverstone factory that they're opening up. And on top of that, I think they're on this roadmap within 4 years' time. They want to be fighting at the top of the grid, winning championships. So I think where they lose one champion, they gain probably a more exceptional driver in Fernando Alonso, given the current form he's in. Yes, he's nowhere near his prime, but considering his age, he's on an absolute other level. And I don't know, maybe this is kind of the wake-up call that the team themselves needs to kind of realise, what a shocking job Lance Stroll has been doing in that car, and also kind of them to give a little wake-up call and justify having such a world-class driver on their team.
Yeah. And, do you think Aston Martin will be able to really keep up, especially because, they took over from Force India, a team that was renowned for making really good results despite having one of the smallest budgets in the entire grid. But then you go to Aston Martin, where now they're much more financially stable. And the problem is so much with Sebastian Vettel, but, the best they can manage was 7th in the Constructors. So, do you think they can really step up their game with Fernando Alonso? Yeah,
it's almost like the more money they have, they don't know what to do with it, quite frankly. But I think they're investing in the long term, so I think it really is a 3 to 5 year project. I mean, they're poaching Red Bull aerodynamics, building a new factory. So overall, I think it is a long-term project, and I think it works for both Alonso and Lawrence Stroll, because Lawrence gets like a two-time world champion, so he's got that prestige. And then Alonso, I don't think he felt welcome at Alpine, because I think he always thought that his seat was earmarked for Piastri, which I think was one of the main reasons, because he was only offered a 1-year extension. So I think he always thought at the end he was going to get pushed out of Alpine, and he thought, I'd rather jump ship now than potentially in the future get pushed out. So I think overall, it's on balance a good move.
Yeah. So I mean, we can only really tell with time really how good Alonso and Aston Martin will be. And before we talk about the biggest bit of this whole timeline, we'll take a quick break. And before we just talk about we talk about Oscar-gate or the Piasco or whatever you like to call it.
You have to call it the Piasco.
Yeah, the Piasco is possibly the best. So, let's get into it. So, we talk about Alonso moving to Aston Martin. So, then we got a very, very weird announcement from Alpine that announced that Piastri was not given the seat, but he was promoted to a full-time race seat for 2023. So that was a weird thing we got in the morning. But then, randomly, later in the evening, we had a tweet from Piastri that literally just completely shuns Alpine publicly, saying that he is not going to be racing for Alpine next year, and pretty much just the fact that final line that said I would not be racing for them next year kind of just It was a bit of a bombshell, let's just say to the least.
That was a great day on F1 Twitter. It doesn't normally have its highlights, but that was a good day. I mean, they announced it while Piastri was asleep in Australia, which I think is why we got the delay, and everyone was like, oh my god, I can't wait till he wakes up and finds out what's happened. But it was just a weird one. A, that they announce it obviously without his approval, and B, that they just do it randomly. It was just like one day they were just like, oh, Piastri, you can go in our team. And I don't think that anyone really expected them to do it, obviously, least of all Oscar Piastri himself.
Yeah, I mean, did you have what were your reactions when you found out about that?
I mean, in a sense, I could see why they did it. At the end of the day, they'd lost, arguably, their star driver. And they need to secure, at least, they had to have some sort of security. I mean, worst comes to worst, I think what Alpine were hoping for was that Oscar was in belief that he would get that seat eventually. I don't think they quite planned on how far he was debating with other teams at the time, but the best case scenario, he'd accept it and be willing to get promoted. Worst case scenario is that he posted the tweet that he did, however, he wouldn't have had any other talks with other teams at the time that he'd have to take the seat. However, where it all came into this whole fiasco, as you put it, is we clearly found out that another particularly papaya team were also fairly in-depth in their contract signings with the same driver. So,
and the fact that we found this afterwards, after the whole thing finished, that Piastri signed a contract on the 4th of July, which is the day after the British Grand Prix. So that was about a whole month before the whole incident. And the fact that Piastri actually told in an interview that he actually told Alpine that he is moving to McLaren next year. So what did he think about?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing's just a mess, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what the Alpine management are doing, quite frankly. I mean, they clearly don't have enough communication with their own drivers. I think, when Alonso left, they were in a bit of a panic, and then they just didn't know what to do. So, let's just rush this announcement out, and then hopefully Piastri has to sign, because then it opens up a whole row. And then the fact they pursued it with the FIA contracts board, I mean, it was just stupid from the get-go, really.
Yeah, but I feel one person you want to feel sorry for is Danny Ricciardo, because he was the real collateral damage in all of this. I mean, fair enough, he has not performed this in the last 2 years at all in McLaren. To be honest, how he won in Monza is still a bit baffling when you compare literally every other race he's done with McLaren. Because Lando has literally just flattened him the last 2 years.
Smoked him.
Literally been mullered and smoked and whatever you want to call it. And then the fact that, July 4th was when Piastri signed the contract, but a couple of weeks later, Ricciardo sent out that tweet and on Instagram saying that he wants to continue with McLaren.
Continue racing.
That didn't really feel nice from Ricciardo's point of view, would it?
No, but Ricciardo hasn't been brilliant over the last few years. The fact he got the win last year and Lando Norris didn't get one was quite baffling. Obviously, Norris was looking on to a win before he forgot that you can pit for wet tyres. But no,
please don't remind me of that, because
intermediate.
in fact, it could have been 2 wins, because Lando was catching up to Ricciardo until he got team orders. So Lando was actually much faster that weekend. But
if they crashed, Bottas would have gone from last to first.
I mean, Bottas really that year would have been the worst thing in the world. But
no, but I think that they did treat Ricciardo a bit disrespectfully, because obviously if he has gone and put out this tweet, this Instagram post saying he's committed to McLaren, and behind his back, which clearly it was, they've signed, or they've looked to have signed another driver, I think they probably should have told him, maybe just told him when they signed him, because obviously you compare it to last season, for example, with George Russell coming into Mercedes. Toto Wolff ensured that Valtteri Bottas had a seat in the sport, and at the start of the season, it was a very good seat in the sport. before even getting George Russell into the team. He probably spoke to Bottas, made sure he got a seat. Then, as soon as obviously Bottas gets a seat, goes to Russell saying, obviously, we want you in the team. And they even gave Bottas his day in the sun. Obviously, it was announced he was moving to Alfa Romeo, I think on the Thursday, and he got the entire day. Obviously, a lot of people praising Bottas for what he'd done at Mercedes, got the entire day, and then the day later, George Russell was announced to be moving to Mercedes. I think that's a very good example of how to do a good driver swap, and McLaren's was a very bad example.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to Piastri now, because really, this is a person who's not even had an FP1 session yet. I mean, yes, he is the third person to win his F2 season win his rookie season. He is, the third after George Russell and Charles Leclerc. And obviously, Piastri's junior career has been nothing short of spectacular, with something like 3-4 championships consecutively in consecutive years as well. So, there, you can definitely see that there is a lot of pressure on Piastri now, because especially causing all this drama and stuff like that. And now he's got, of all people, he's got Lando Norris, who's arguably definitely one of the top 3 drivers in the last 2 years, especially if you compare with teammate and what we expect from the car. So, I mean, what do you think we have a lot of expectations from Piastri next year?
I think Piastri himself, obviously, as you put it, has had an outstanding junior career, and I think it was a shame that he couldn't get a seat earlier on the season. But I think when it comes down to it, having not had an FP1 session previously, having only ever done simulator work, I think it's a pretty bold choice for McLaren, who are a team themselves looking to try to rebound and try and climb themselves back up to fight the likes of Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes, to take on 2 very young drivers that are still very early on in their career, especially with Lando Norris being the current team leader, and for the foreseeable future probably will be. But as a young gunner, Piastri's not going to want to come in and kind of settle for second place. I think he's kind of had his whole F1 career kind of been a what if, and I think finally he's now got his chance to turn that what if into actually showing what he can do. But I think when it comes down to it, they're going to have a pretty good driver lineup, but I do think there are going to be some heated moments where maybe team orders may be disobeyed, or maybe it might get a little bit heated, as we did think it was going to be with Leclerc and Sainz when it was first announced as well. So
yeah, I mean, sorry, another thing as well with Piastri is that Alpine have done all this work for him. But let's look at it from Alpine's point of view now, because they've spent all this money, time and resources on Piastri, developing him as a junior driver, only for him to basically ditch them at the last moment and jump ship to what is literally their closest rival in the championship right now. But then you also look at them from the fact that they make such a big deal about Piastri being such a big deal about the next big thing, whatever. And obviously he is one of the most anticipated drivers in last couple of years, you can say, because of his junior career. But then they don't seem to prioritise putting him in the seat very much. And really the option was jumping ship to McLaren or going on loan to Williams. So do you really blame Piastri for jumping ship like that?
No, of course. I mean, he won F2, was it 2 years ago? And then since then, he's just not been in an F1 seat, and he's seeing other drivers he's raced with go on to get F1 seats. And it's like, either a year at Williams just in the back, or go to a team that's a manufacturer and is going to be competing for podiums. And if you think about the other teams in general, like Red Bull have Max, Ferrari have Leclerc, Mercedes have Russell. Alpine don't really have that up and coming new driver to take them for the next 5 to 6 years, and Piastri was that person, and now they've messed it up basically.
Yeah. But I guess it wasn't all that bad for Alpine now, because it hasn't been all bad, because they've still managed to grab a driver, and they haven't exactly grabbed a bad driver, because they managed to grab Pierre Gasly from AlphaTauri, who looks set to go for and yet another year with the Red Bull. Well, we can't call it a junior team, but it kind of still it's the sister team, but it kind of still is.
We have reached peak French with that team now.
Yeah, we have French team, French engine, French drivers. I mean, it's pretty much an all French team except for the fact that it's based in the UK.
That car is just going to keep breaking down every 5 minutes because it will just refuse. It will go on strike.
Yeah.
Literally.
It'll make it out of baguettes somehow. It's just like, I mean, Ocon and Gasly is an interesting lineup. Obviously, the French aspect does come into it, but we do, as you say, know the history between the two. I feel like we don't know no one really knows exactly what happens. There's a lot of rumours about them, what happened in the past. We know that as far as we know, they're not the biggest fans of one another. So it could be a spicy one. Obviously, we've seen Ocon has had incidents in the past with his teammates. He's someone that I think races his teammates quite hard. So if that happens with Gasly, and obviously if they do have that history, maybe it comes bubbling up back to the surface. I mean, we've seen best friends go into teammates with one another and come out of it with a bit of animosity. Obviously, Hamilton and Rosberg.
You're referring to that.
No. But you're getting two people that may potentially not like each other already, and then may be coming close to each other on the track and may come to collisions at some point or another.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Pierre Gasly. I mean, he's resurrected his career from, Red Bull demotion after 6 months to basically race wins with AlphaTauri, and now he's Alpine. I mean, fair play.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly go around the room here. Who do you think will come out on top, Ocon or Gasly? I'll start with you, Sai.
I'd have to say Ocon, to be fair. I think he's had more time with the team. He's embedded in it. And I think, overall, he'll win.
I am going to have to side with Sai here. I'm also backing Esteban Ocon to overturn Pierre Gasly.
I think Ocon as well. I think it might get closer by the end of the season because I think those two drivers are probably quite equal in terms of their talent. But obviously Ocon's been there for longer, so I think it makes sense that he would be the one to go ahead or at least dominate for the early part of the season.
Yeah, I think it's a unanimous 4 out of 4. Ocon will beat Gasly. So I think probably might as well. It's a good bridge since we're talking about Gasly and AlphaTauri. We'll talk about his replacement at AlphaTauri with
the super sub
himself, Nick De Vries, who just comes in. Literally, he drives an Aston Martin in the morning. Next thing you know, he's jumping straight into the Williams, and then
gets points on his debut.
Gets points on the debut, whereas the GOAT didn't. I mean, and now he's got AlphaTauri, which basically means he's got an even better seat than what was originally meant for him. I mean, do you think it will be a good move for De Vries at the end in the near future?
Well, he's on the F1 grid. Yeah. I think it's the best move. The best move that he could have.
As I say, sorry.
No, it's the best move that he could have made. I think that one race where he was on the grid, he made it count, and sometimes it does take just one shot to get into F1, and that is clearly what's happened here, because I think was it Helmut Marko or whoever was in charge of recruitment said that De Vries wasn't even on their radar before that Italian race, and if Gasly was looking to leave, then De Vries was an option, and with that showing, he clearly put in the performance and got the seat.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a fair point. He kind of took the shot when he needed to. But at the end of the day, if you look at De Vries' career, a Formula E champion, an F2 champion, he's always had racing experience within him. Yes, it's not in Formula 1, but he's had experience in one-seater motorsport. He's also had experience in FP1 sessions and driving for multiple teams. So you've got to argue his adaptability at the end of the day is going to be top notch when you look at the performance that he's shown, which some might argue is he's in a better position, I think, than Oscar Piastri right now. I feel like with Piastri, he's such an unknown, but with De Vries, you've kind of got you've got a lot of knowledge behind him. You've got a lot of backing, and I think the biggest loser is in all of this are kind of Williams. They really missed out on their chance to score a top driver here, and I think AlphaTauri have got a very good replacement for their Gasly leaving their team for next year.
Yeah, I mean, but then you're talking about Williams. Yes, they missed out the chance to Nick De Vries, but they have a chance to actually sign, for once, actually one of their own junior drivers.
Yes, but at what expense? At what cost?
Yeah,
did this come?
We never know. You don't know how good someone is until they actually reach the sport. I mean, you look at Romain Grosjean, stellar junior career. I mean, yes, he was a quick driver, but everyone knows his reputation for, frankly, crashing every single time he gets into a car.
Hit him.
Yeah, and Ericsson hitting him every at Baku every single year. But it's do you think Sargent can land a shot at Williams, being that's one of the two last seats to be filled?
I mean, he's got a chance, to be fair. I mean, I don't know, really. I guess they need a replacement driver, and I guess it's a good thing to promote within, I think, because normally they always end up getting someone who's reserved to go to a higher team, so they don't really have a chance to build from within. So I think it's good.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about Sargent, and also the potential of a US driver coming into the grid?
Yeah, I feel. I think two drivers that I had on my radar that could have potentially gone to Williams are Dennis Hauger and Logan Sargent. I feel like those two drivers are probably the most viable, especially Logan Sargent, knowing that he's already part of that inner infrastructure. I still feel like, given it's his first official F2 season, I think it might be a little too early, but the excitement that it will bring around the team and the actual attractiveness that the team will get, I think might be worth it in terms of actually attracting more sponsors. Now that obviously we'll get onto the race calendar, we're having multiple races in the US, having a US driver, trying to attract that sponsorship, the all crucial money that they need to develop. I think it's an interesting prospect, but at the end of the day, they don't really have any other choice. And if they are going to get some marketing gains out of it, I don't see why not.
I mean, you look at Logan Sargent and his performances in F3 and F2, and they are incredibly good. He's not a driver that's sort of coming in because there's no one else to do it. And I think if he did come in, I think he would perform quite well. And obviously the American aspect as well, promoting the sport in America. And I think Williams, it would make a lot of sense for Williams to want to do that, because obviously if we are going to go to America 3 times next season, to have an American driver on the grid might be a very good decision for them.
Yeah. I mean, and I think I suppose we'll quickly finish off the whole drive market aspect of 2023 with the other remaining seat on the calendar with Haas, because Haas have had a very up and down season this year. Obviously, they had a really, really good first race season with Magnussen finishing P6, and then also with Mick Schumacher, whose seat was actually the one at risk. He had a very, very bad start to the season, just crashing every single time. I mean, the crashes at Saudi Arabia and Monaco are the two biggest ones to probably think about. But then you move on to the European season, where he suddenly becomes much better, and he actually has 2 points finishes. And ever since the summer break, Haas hasn't really been a point scoring car, but Mick hasn't really been too far back behind Magnussen. Yet Haas seemed to be quite adamant in dropping Schumacher next year. Do you think Schumacher should keep a seat?
I don't know. This one's weird. It's the Haas has got worse, and I think it's sort of similar to the Alfa Romeo in a way. Everyone's looking at Zhou Guanyu and saying Zhou's had a good season because although he's so far behind Bottas in the championship, that was because of the start of the season the car was good, and when Bottas was good, or when Bottas knew the car, because obviously been in F1 for a long time, he can get to grips with it quite quickly. He was able to score those points, and now Zhou's probably performing ever so slightly better. I would almost say it's maybe the same thing for Mick Schumacher as well. See, Magnussen been in the sport for longer, or out of it, but obviously his career's been a lot longer. had that good start to the season, was able to get those points. But now they're a lot closer together, but it feels like no one's really rating Mick Schumacher's performances, even though he's outperforming Magnussen in a lot of races, and it's coming down to a lot of Haas issues themselves, like reliability, pit stops, things like that. I don't know whether I would be replacing Schumacher over Magnussen, but I don't know if both of them deserve to stay on the grid.
Yeah. But to be honest, you look at the potential replacements, you haven't really got an extensive list. It's really only, you got Nico Hülkenberg.
Yes.
But then Hülkenberg doesn't really seem that desperate to return to F1. And don't forget, he is 35 now. He's not exactly a young driver anymore. And the other seeming option is Antonio Giovinazzi, who, let's be honest, he never really performed that well. And he was being regularly beaten by Kimi Räikkönen, who frankly just did not care at that point. In typical Kimi fashion, he just did not care. But yeah, what do you think about the whole Haas situation, Inni?
Well, in my opinion, I think Giovinazzi straight away is out of the picture. I feel like he's been through the system, he's had his time in F1. But I think where it comes down is Ferrari themselves, in terms of their young drivers and the young driver academy, they don't really have a fairly extensive list, or a standout driver for that matter. If you look at like the Prima Racing teams and even down into F3, there isn't really, or you could argue potentially Arthur Leclerc, but there isn't really anyone that's kind of like at the peak of their game or shining to come through. So I feel like they're in a bit of a sticky situation with Zhou Guanyu kind of being, poached from the Alpine Academy and taken over. I feel like the only best thing that they could possibly do is keep Schumacher. He's a known force. And we also have to bear in mind, he's only had one full season in F1. Alongside arguably the worst driver of all time, and also in not even arguably, the worst car of all time last year. So I feel like this is his first proper official season to kind of embed into things. And yes, it had a rocky start, but I feel like, especially as it was pointed out, the Haas hasn't been the car it was at the start. So on average, yes, he has been beating Magnussen, but the fact that neither of them have been finishing the points as regularly anymore, I think it kind of gets shoved under the carpet a little bit. So I feel like he just kind of needs the backing and security right now from Gunter and the rest of the team. So I feel like the wise decision would be to keep him. And with obviously Magnussen on a multi-year deal, unless he himself chooses to terminate it, I don't see why he's going to come out of it anytime soon. He also loves racing, so for them, I think they're in a bit of a tough situation, but with an easy solution.
Yeah. I mean, but has to really seem like, at least Steiner, it seems like he really wants to get rid of Schumacher. Is that really justified? Do you think so?
I don't really think so. I think Mick has been performing better throughout the season. He has got better throughout the season. And I think if you look at the alternatives, there's no guaranteed alternative that's going to perform better than Mick. So I think overall, I think they should still keep Mick. I think he deserves another season at least. I think F1 drivers, you should give them at least, unless they're absolutely awful like Mazepin, you should give them at least like 3 seasons, I think, to like prove themselves.
Yeah, I suppose that really is it. It's just a complicated situation with a simple solution, you can say, with Haas. So that kind of brings it to the end of the driver market section of the show. After the break, we'll talk about the cost cap. Pretty much the biggest news that we've had in the last 2 weeks with Red Bull actually overspending, and let's possibly get into the single biggest news and controversy that we've seen that unfold ever since Singapore with the cost cap breach. So basically what it is, that rumour basically came out the Singapore Grand Prix weekend that 2 drivers potentially breached the cost cap regulations in the 2021 season, the 2 being Red Bull and Aston Martin, with the main focus being on Red Bull because Red Bull were the one who actually won the Drivers' Championship that year. I'm not going to talk about how, because some people don't really hate us talking.
Some people might not like it.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know...
that race will be in my nightmares for a long time.
Very happy Latifi.
I have never watched that race back.
Really?
And I will never watch
I
that
have
race
seen it
back.
about 20 times.
I've seen it about that
I don't
many
want
times as well.
I recorded the last 20 minutes of it.
Yeah, I remember I filmed it on my phone, just at the last corner.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's not talk about that today,
Let's
because
not.
we'll be here until about next week at least talking about it again. And so, yeah, Aston Martin and Red Bull were basically rumoured. And then we're going to find out, I think, was it the following Wednesday?
It's going to be... Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
it was
'cause
going to be Wednesday.
We were recording when we thought it was going to come out, but it didn't end up coming out on that day.
And then we found out it was just going to be delayed. And then obviously Japan came along. Max Verstappen won the World Drivers' Championship in the most awkward of manners. And then Monday comes along, and we finally get the statement from the FIA saying that Aston Martin weren't a procedural breach.
Yeah.
So pretty much nothing.
I think that's just
Anything,
signing paperwork incorrectly.
Yeah.
Williams got one earlier this season, which was a 25,000 euro
25,
dollar
Euros.
euros.
And then Red Bull were actually found with a minor overspend as well as procedural overreach. I think was it procedural as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was
Yeah.
it mine overspend less than 5%?
Yeah, less than 5%. So, but the thing is,
Which really I'm
Exactly.
gonna butt in here. Sorry, it really understates how much money
Money,
can you
5%,
go
yeah,
you can go
exactly.
over by. It's up to 7.2 million. What currency do they do it in?
I
think
think
it's
it's
in
euros.
is it euros or dollars?
Euros.
Let me try and find it. But that's a lot of money when what everything has been said after. You do realise how not little money it takes, but in terms of your entire budget, how little percentage can actually make quite a large difference. What Lewis Hamilton said, a £400,000 floor can be the difference between, or like that can be an extra 2/10 of a second, and that can be the difference between being second on the grid, being first on the grid, jumping someone at a pit stop around the track you can't overtake at, and then gaining those 7 points that will win you the title.
I think the point is with £7 million extra that you can spend. For some teams, that's a third car that they can build and prototype, which is kind of crazy. I think it should be an overspend is an overspend, whether it's major or minor. The cost cap is a cap for a reason. Why do you care how much if they overspend in the first place, right? I think it wasn't really enforced, and I think teams found a grey area and they used it. That's what they do with regulations all the time. If they find a loophole, they're going to use it. It's what Red Bull did. And if it isn't substantially covered in the rules inherently, they're probably only going to face a monetary fine at the end of the day.
Yeah. And, you know, really, what do you think really should happen with the cost cap? I'm just going to go around the room here.
Yeah.
What do you think the punishment should be? Because, you know, the FI has given loads of suggestions what the punishment can be. They haven't been strict. So really just to stop teams from potentially overspending to, you know, give themselves the advantage and pay a small price to do with it. But I want to go around. What do you genuinely think should happen to Red Bull as a minor overspend? Because you got teams are not really saying much, and then you got, was it Zach Brown said the other day that, you know, he didn't specifically mention Red Bull, but
We all know.
We all know he didn't meant to.
yeah, we
He
all
wasn't
know that
writing
meant
this
that.
letter just because he
Exactly,
felt
yeah.
like
He said
it.
that an overspend is at the end of the day cheating.
Yeah.
And then even Toto Wolff said that if Red Bull get a monetary fine, they'll overspend next year. We could expend
With the same
Everyone.
fine, yeah.
And well, no, Mercedes will probably spend 500 million euros next
Isn't
year
it?
and build a literal rocket ship and build another W12. But, you know, Jenny, what do you... I'm going to start with Sai, go around the room. What do you think the punishment should be, in your opinion?
I think Zach Brown's idea was pretty good, wasn't it? Like double what they've overspent, plus like a reduction in their like aerodynamic, was it computational time?
Yeah.
The CFD,
Yeah, CFD.
Yeah?
I think
mean-
that's reasonable.
I mean, I don't know. The way I see it, I feel like it should be pretty drastic. I think, first of all, the whole minor and major overspend should be taken out. It's just overspend is overspend. And I feel like it should be compounded depending on however much you overspend. That's going to dictate however many CFD hours you get taken off for each like aerodynamic training period, the ATR periods that you get allocated. So I feel in Red Bull's case, it should be when they do inevitably end up finishing first in the constructors this year, I feel obviously you have the scaling ladder of teams getting less time for development if they finish higher up. I feel they should have even more taken off for the sake of the overspend. So I feel like that's the main differences the main punishment that should be given. Just take off the amount of time they can for development, because at the end of the day, that's ultimately is going to allow other teams to kind of know that this can't kind of carry forward.
I don't know, and this is a difficult one, because I think a lot of what you could be looking at as punishment would depend on whether Red Bull had won the Drivers' Championship last year. Realistically, let's say Latifi didn't exist for 1 second and Hamilton had romped home to quite a dominant Abu Dhabi victory, taking his 8th world title, and then we find out this October, everything else still happens the same way, and we find out this October Red Bull had breached the spending cap. We'd be saying probably give them a big fine, reduction in maybe their cost budget or cost cap for next year, reduction in wind tunnel time, CFD, stuff like that. But because Max Verstappen did win the title, now there's that added point of, do you take that title away from him?
That
because
jeopardy of it.
While it's not his fault that they've overspent, he is the one that directly benefited from it. You can't really do anything to Red Bull as a whole, because they didn't win the constructors and they were so far ahead of Ferrari and McLaren in the constructors battle last year that you maybe drop them a position. They tell them to give back prize money or something. Like, you've got to say, we drop Red Bull 1, 2, 3, whatever positions in the championship to get rid of sort of like that gap. I don't know. I think it's another case of where the FIA have been way too broad in their rulings, and I really think they should have clarified exactly what would have been the punishment before we needed to do it, because now whatever punishment is decided is going to be looked at by some people saying it's too harsh, some people saying it's too light, and again we'll just have another big argument about whether Max Verstappen should have won the title, how much Red Bull should be fined by, and everything that could happen obviously in the future as well.
I mean, yeah, when you put it that way, but you know how when Red Bull was saying the overspend was spent on catering.
Oh, that was so, the memes were great. We love those memes.
Max the Schnitzel. But I think it's ultimately...
Have you seen Max Verstappen?
But I think it's ultimately down to the fact that, like, even if they did state their overspend under catering, right, that just means they allocated more of that catering money that they had overspent on other parts of their overall cost cap, finances that they determined. So it's just because they define it as being, it wasn't development related, doesn't mean that they didn't end up spending a higher share of the catering part into the actual development area. So I think until it's properly broken down into like percentages of what was actually spent and how it was done, will always be in speculation, and the key point is it's going to be carried forward going on. So whatever punishment they give now, all the teams are going to be looking upon it when they decide whether it's worth overspending in the future. So this is kind of a tipping point.
I love all the Mercedes memes. They'll just interpret the budget rules differently and just come out with a rocket ship
in it, yeah.
Next year. Yeah. No, I think as you say, obviously, when people are saying, it's just on catering, the point is, because it wasn't spent on catering, it was spent somewhere else. Yeah. And I think it was like another thing's like Adrian Newey's salary is a big thing, because there's some sort of like rules and like the top 3 earners are excluded, but like he's apparently not a proper contracted employee, and that's how they've sort of done a bit of a workaround. Because realistically, if you had to pinpoint one man at that team that has the biggest impact on whether that car wins or not, it is likely to be Adrian Newey. I just think the FIA has gone really quiet as well, and I'm not sure that's the best idea right now, because no one knows what's going to happen, and which I think is part of the reason the speculation has died down a little bit, because everyone's sort of waiting for the FIA to lob that grenade of the punishment in, and then see what happens.
Yeah, it's definitely a very, very, very awkward situation for us to be, because the fact that nobody knows, and especially if Red Bull do appeal, this thing can go, and it could go into court. It could take months.
Carry on into next season.
And carry on well into next season. Like, the 2021 season's already finished. I'm just hoping this thing is just sorted out as soon as, hopefully by Abu Dhabi, we have some form of decision on what's going to be happening. Because especially everyone, yes, they haven't officially won it yet, but Ferrari have to outscore Red Bull by 19 points in order for Red Bull not to win the Constructors in Austin.
Oh, that's when they'll tell us. They'll just wait for them to win the Constructors, and then they'll give us the punishment.
Yeah. But I think, to put my personal opinion, what should happen, I think, there should be a major docking on the testing facilities.
Yeah.
And maybe not much on the cost cap, because I don't think that's going to make much of a difference, but I think really restrict on the amount of development Red Bull can do.
Yeah.
And really hinder the development, because really the whole point of the constructor is to build the fastest car possible. So if they really hinder Red Bull's capability as a real big, I feel that will be a really big punishment, because Red Bull can't effectively build the best car they possibly can.
But there's a caveat in that, because in terms of where they might have overspent in development, say it was in the engine department, the engine's frozen.
Yeah.
So in terms of the FIA coming in to do anything about further engine development, that's not going to have any further occurring problems, because till 2025 or 2026 even, the engines are fixed. So Red Bull could very easily argue it from that perspective.
But isn't the engine separate to the actual cost cap?
Yeah, the engine's not included.
Actually,
what engine development's not included?
Which is a part of I think Red Bull and the FIA, because I think Red Bull might have tried to move a few too many things under the engine development bit, and the FIA were like, no, this is cost cap, and this is part of the reason why you're over.
Yeah, because I believe the things that are not included in the cost of it include engine development, the salaries of the drivers and the top 3 personnel in the team, and and basically marketing stuff.
That's fair.
So,
All of
that. I guess we just have to wait and see really what we really say about that. Do you have any really much more to say about the cost cap, really?
I think that they should be banned from all further championships.
I agree.
And that we should just get rid of Abu Dhabi for no reason.
No, we actually should. There's no real reason. Other than it's actually a terrible facility.
It is, and the fact that it's still on is season ender. Finish on Sao Paulo, get it over with, give the fans something they want to see.
There's exactly 2 fun things that can happen at Abu Dhabi, and that is nostalgia for any drivers retiring. And I swear they always retire before the end of the race. If you're retiring from F1, you will not see the finish of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. It's happened so many times over the last few years.
I think
it's
Fernando
ridiculous.
Alonso was one of the only ones in the past few years that actually finished.
Yeah.
It's ironic because that McLaren didn't finish much.
Yeah, it is what it is. Hopefully, Vettel and Ricciardo actually do finish the race and finish it well.
1-2, 1-2 in
comments. No, Vettel and Ricciardo will not finish. I can guarantee Latifi will. That man's going to be driving around 3 seconds a lap slower just so he can get to the finish.
And Alonso on the tractor again.
No.
Oh, well. Let's go to the next stage of our rant with the 2023 calendar. And the absolute cluster this thing is. I just really don't like this calendar. I'll just run through the calendar really, really quickly. So we have the same start as last year, where we had Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Australia. None of them all 2 weeks apart. And then we have the return of Shanghai. Well, for now we have the return of Shanghai, because it's been cancelled like 400 million times in the last 3 years for COVID and stuff like that. We don't know whether China will come until it actually is back on, until we're actually there.
Until we're at the event.
Yeah.
And the cars have started to go around.
Yeah. And then afterwards we'll be moving to Baku, and then it's a double header with Baku, and then
Miami.
I'm like, the first double header of the season is you're going from literally two halves of the world.
Exactly.
I'm like, it's why? And then for some reason we head all the way back to Europe. So we got Emilia Romagna. I'm not gonna try and remember the full name.
Emilia Romagna del Premier El Dino.
Pretty sure there was Made in Italy in there at some point.
Yeah, there is made in Italy. So let's just say it's Imola.
Yeah.
Well, can we just call it San Marino Grand Prix again? Can we just call
That's
it
a
back to
throwback.
that?
2005 throwback.
Yeah. And then we moved back to Barcelona, then Montreal in June.
Yeah, back to North America for some odd. You would have thought
Yeah.
the brain cells that made this calendar would have thought, oh, let's put the North American races together.
Maybe
but
put maybe put Miami and Montreal back to. I mean, I get Canada's like really cold and Miami's like really hot, but you know, a hot race in Miami, why not? It creates more drama. We already have one in Singapore, so.
Then we've got the best part of the calendar, which is Europe.
Yeah, the Europe section.
Europe
Austria,
supremacy.
UK, Hungary, and then I don't know who decided to do this, but Belgium's moved before the summer break.
They put Belgium before the summer break.
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
disgusting. That should be illegal.
No, so now we can't.
Hungary is the final race before the summer break, and it always will be.
Exactly.
I mean, what's wrong with having Bottas bowling every single year? We hung some wee bowling. Come on, man. And then we had the summer break. Hopefully, we don't have more fiascos. But you know, then we go to Zandvoort as the opening race at the.
That's
wrong.
That's wrong.
It's just wrong, man.
Just swap Zandvoort. Put Zandvoort as the no.
No.
Put Hungary as the
Just
final.
cue Hungary as the end.
Just move the summer break earlier and leave Belgium.
I mean, we can drop like half the races in the second half of the calendar anyway. We wouldn't care less anyway.
And then we just gone a world tour
At this point, they've just thrown logistics out the window.
Yeah, Italy with the Italian Grand Prix with Monza, where we know the question is how Verstappen will DNF.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then Singapore and Japan. That isn't too bad because you know it's in the same region
that
of the world.
makes sense.
That's
And then
like the
Qatar as well. That's not too bad.
No, Qatar.
Qatar still is on the other side of Asia.
Qatar realistically should be next to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much
Or at
as much
least
as that would be a terrible ending to the
Yeah.
season.
Or at least like with Bahrain and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, no, Qatar
know?
should be in that first half season.
Yeah.
So if I-
First
after-
two races or the last half.
Yeah. I
Last
was
two
gonna say
races.
after Qatar, like USA, Mexico, Brazil, and Las Vegas, I feel logistically they're all right.
I mean, Las Vegas sounds
they're
really
all north
interesting.
and south.
I mean, yeah, those four they've always been
So
together.
just change Qatar after Vegas.
Realistically, on this calendar, the problem races in terms of logistics are Brazil and Australia, and I guess to a lesser extent Japan.
Maybe no. I would say Las Vegas and Abu Dhabi. Because, you know, Las Vegas and Abu Dhabi is a double header.
We love a good 8 day. You know, it's just that it's 8 days because technically the Vegas race is on a Saturday night.
It isn't Saturday night. Yeah, we got
Not for
another
us, though.
early morning.
Las Vegas should be interesting, I think.
I am
I'm
actually
looking forward to
looking forward to Las Vegas.
I'm
Come
one
on,
of the pessimists
200
of
miles
this.
On the strip.
I'm one of the pessimists of Las Vegas.
I mean,
seeing the track.
I'm not looking forward for the race. The race is gonna be abysmal. I know that for sure.
the scenes,
But you
the
know,
atmosphere,
the scenes. You know, I'm sorry, but it could actually be better than Monaco. Because the thing is with Monaco nowadays, the cars are
So
just
you
way
say
too
it
big.
could be better
It
than
will be
Monaco.
better than Monaco in every conceivable way.
I've watched paint dry and it's better than Monaco.
No, but at least Monaco qualifying.
Oh, Monaco qualifying.
I'm comparing with Monaco. I'm comparing the qualifying. But you know, yeah, the race spectacle. We don't talk about that. That's just watching literally, a thing, like a slow internet watching or game download on the Xbox with like 2 megabits per
0.5
second.
Mbps.
Yeah,
I do sort of like the Las Vegas circuit. I think it's
You
quite
think
cool.
so?
I mean, it's interesting. A lot of straights, a
In
lot
the
of
night, yeah.
Yeah, and it's mainly because Saturday night F1 costs 200 miles an hour down the Las Vegas Strip.
So they've
At
added-
night.
That's going
Yeah.
to be the best spectacle ever. I'm so
Past
hyped for
Caesar
that.
Hotel, past
Yeah.
They have changed it a little bit. They've added a chicane instead of. There was the curve at the top.
Do you
And now they've added the chicane.
Looks like the Doge beam.
Wait, let's see.
If you turn it upside down, it looks like a pig. Genuinely, anyone listening, go to the Las Vegas circuit and turn it upside down.
It's a
and
pig.
It does look like a pig.
Yeah, no, it does.
We built a circuit that looks like a
With
pig.
a
So
severe
we've got a
obesity.
spoon circuit in Jeddah, and now we've got a pig
pig
circuit. in
Spoon
Las
circuit and
Vegas.
then pig with massive obesity.
And we got a whale for Austria, so.
So,
Austria look like a whale.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna need to look this up now.
Like it's still like thing. Like,
Oh my
going up, yeah.
so now, so it looks like F1 helmet takers decided to design F1 circuits like different animals.
Sort of. It's a bit of a deformed whale. It's a whale with very severe back issues. I can sort of see it. Actually, no, that one makes it look a bit better. No, it's got the whale's got a large tail,
Yeah.
but I can
Yeah.
see the whale.
Well, at least Austria's still a good track.
Oh,
Yeah.
We've had like almost every race we've had.
bangers.
At least since
Absolute
2018. You know, 2018 onwards, almost all of them have
All
been
have been
bangers.
good.
Maybe last year's double header wasn't as good. It was still a good race,
Of course
but
it wasn't. Of course it wasn't.
but you know,
Well, F1 drivers have, I'm just reading this Vegas article quickly. F1 drivers have predicted speeds could get up to 370 kilometers per hour.
Oh my! Wait, down Las Vegas is.
With-
it's good
yeah.
because the thing is, it's a very long straight, and on top of that, night, so the air's thinner, and you know, the fact that it's going to be a low downforce.
So the
track, isn't
fastest ever
Bringing in
F1
the engineering degree right now.
it? Yeah.
the fastest ever F1 speed has been 372 and a half
Azerbaijan, right?
in Mexico.
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 Valtteri
Low
Bottas.
altitude, that's a.
So
But no,
Oh,
high altitude,
2015,
sorry.
2015 cars were crazy fast.
Yeah,
It was insane.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, but this is like, what do you think? This is a good calendar?
No.
Or not
No.
really?
No, too
I've-
many races.
too many. I feel like we could lose China now. I don't
Okay.
really
I
feel the
like we
need
could lose
to.
Losail.
We can. I mean, there's
I thought
loads.
they were going to
think
build their
Qatar is
own.
a holiday.
I
They
thought they
could-
were going to build their own track for.
They're not.
Qatar.
Oh no, I think they're keeping the same one as it was.
Oh, that's pointless. Why have we
Well,
done
at least you
that?
can see loads of punches.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, at least it'll make something interesting.
Right, so I'm fine with Bahrain being the star race because
Yeah,
Bahrain as the
Bahrain.
start has always been brilliant. I am actually a bigger fan of Saudi Arabia than most, and I will say
I
it again.
like
No,
Arabia.
Saudi Arabia is good if it wasn't in Saudi
Yes,
Arabia.
absolutely.
Yeah, fair
That's
enough,
exactly
yeah.
what it is. The track is absolutely
The
really,
track's
especially
it's kind of Suzuka-esque in a way.
That qualifying is my favourite qualifying session of the
Like
year.
2021 or 22.
No, just in general,
Oh,
Saudi
Saudi
Arabia
Arabia,
qualifying is my
I mean,
favourite.
just look at Verstappen's lap last year.
Oh my god, he
Almost
should have. What a lap! that
the
was.
the TV direction on those laps is actually incredible.
Great, it's insane. The speed that you can.
They're going fast.
one- yeah,
the
the
walls
one-
are close.
Yeah, the one time where TV direction actually decides to be good.
We don't
this
talk
whole
about
year.
Monaco.
Yeah.
We don't talk
Another
about Monaco
negative
TV
of Monaco.
direction.
Well, they're not, but they're not F1's own TV direction, so
yeah,
they don't
that's
count
what
anyway.
it is.
So
So Bahrain, then Saudi Arabia, then Australia's always just been a difficult one to shove into the calendar. I think we've got
Australia's a
to.
bit of a meh race.
We sort of
altogether, I
need
think.
it to be one.
Australia needs to be there,
Yeah.
but it's not bad, but it's not good either.
I'm just thinking more
Just
travel, really, like
yeah.
flying
Okay,
and stuff.
fine.
I'm
Yeah.
fine with Australia's always been a difficult one to shove into the calendar because it's so far away from everything. Then going back to China and back to Azerbaijan.
That's
Makes sense because it's sort of like you're coming round, you're coming round like the globe in a way.
Yeah.
Then we go to Miami, and this is where it annoys me a lot.
similar to.
Just put Canada and Miami next to each other,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
realistically.
What's wrong with putting like I don't know, kind of 2 weeks early and
You could probably,
man,
we could race in Canada in May, surely.
I mean, the cars were really
How cold is
yeah.
it in May in Montreal?
They just had to put really soft tires on.
Yeah, you could race in Canada in
Return
May.
of the Hypersoft.
Yes,
They go-
man. I want the Pirelli Rainbow back so bad.
Innit?
The
Yeah.
Rainbow
so
was
much
good.
easier
It's
to understand.
So nice to understand. C1, C5s.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, so put Canada and Miami together. Then basically, you've actually just got, if you move Canada to next to Miami, you've just got Europe for the next 10 races.
Oh, that would work.
and that would work perfectly.
Yeah.
Then Singapore and Japan, fair. They're quite close together. Then just put Qatar next to. There's not actually. much you need to do to change this calendar to be good.
It's just
You just need to move Qatar next to Abu Dhabi, or
Miami
up
next
to
to Canada.
Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, and then Canada next to Miami, and you've got a calendar that makes sense logistically, that isn't too bad, and
Well,
looks a lot
you
better.
need to remove tracks like Shanghai, Abu Dhabi. You know,
Yeah, we just remove
So-
Abu Dhabi. That makes the calendar.
remove Shanghai.
I love
Abu
you
Dhabi.
know what? A finale in Las Vegas would actually be really good.
See, I think
Depending
it'd
on
be
the
good for
track,
the
yeah.
scenes, but I think the track itself would
Well,
make
we
it
haven't.
pretty dismal.
I think until we actually see it,
Yeah.
it'd be hard to tell.
I mean, everyone's dissing Saudi Arabia before.
Yeah.
I always thought before we went to the Saudi Arabian Grand
I
Prix,
thought the track was
it was
pretty
gonna
cool.
give us a good race.
Yeah, it looked like.
I don't know why people were dissing. I think it was just the
fastest speed
Saudi
circuit.
Arabian bit.
Yeah. Well, because of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's the
think it's got a
reason why
bad
people
rap.
are not happy about Saudi Arabia. That's the only reason why.
So I think if we did have to keep the 24 races, which I do agree is too many, but if we did have to keep them, move Qatar next to either Abu Dhabi or the start, and move Canada next to Miami or the other way around, and you've got a calendar that makes sense logistically, makes sense in terms of like traveling and stuff. It's better for the environment. And move Belgium back after the summer break, because that's sacrilegious to have Belgium as the final race before the summer
Yeah.
break.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes. But I still stand by we need a race in Africa.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, Kyalami. Kyalami, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the current situation is they're just looking for sponsors.
Sponsorships to actually because it is a grade 1. So I think it's FIA homologated.
No, it's currently grade 2. They're making the upgrades right now, or I think they've made the upgrades to make it grade 1. But the financial thing is an issue, and also, why do you put it in the calendar? Because there's already
That's the
24
issue.
races.
And
What do you drop?
especially Kyalami, it's so distant. Also, it's similar to Australia in a way.
In fact, it's worse than Australia.
Because
Because
it's
it's-
lower down. Is it?
I think you could put it after Brazil, maybe. I guess.
I mean,
No.
was it?
I don't know.
Wise, it's fairly similar, right?
Yeah, Kyle Army's just going to be another one that is very out of the way, and you've got to take the L on flying there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we are
Well-
talking about expanding the sport, I
Yeah.
think Africa's maybe not like it's an untapped resource. As to how big the resource
We don't
is,
know, yeah.
we don't know.
Mm.
But I feel like it should.
Africa's
I-
the only continent we don't
We-
know.
Yeah,
As a
Yeah.
world championship, you have
I'm
to have
surprised I'm surprised we're going back to China. I thought China was basically done because.
What, like another Vietnam?
No, I thought it was just like we'd had the 2 years without it. No one really missed it.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's much. I guess maybe
think
because of
it's
Guan
like
Yu
Zhou
Zhou
Guanyu.
or Zhou Guan
Yeah.
Yu that we're going back. But I wouldn't have been fussed if China had never come back onto the calendar.
I guess, well, money.
Money
Yeah.
speaks.
Is it even because I swear they've never been like one of those big money races? It's just sort of been there.
But now you got Joe
No, but there's a lot of fans.
Yeah.
in China.
You got a lot of fans
Yeah.
in China, and there's a lot of like a lot of big companies that can sponsor. So that's another market that's actually quite
Oh,
untapped.
big positive of the calendar. I've just read it on the F1 webpage. It's not on the same. There's no race on the same weekend as the 24 Hours of Le Mans
Oh yeah, because they said they were going to have to try and
Thank
work
you.
around it.
because
Thank you so
Le Mans 23 with the hypercars is looking
Isn't it
insane.
isn't
Yes.
it? It looks so
Yes.
nice.
24 is looking even better. I think Lamborghini are coming back on the grid. I think
Oh, really?
the cars will be better because there'll
That's
be
gonna
more
be so
experience. I might go to Le Mans 24.
Le Mans very underrated.
Le Mans
Yeah.
24 in 2024. It makes sense.
good. Yeah, why not? Man, that's genuinely
That's
going to
going to
be
be a
good.
spectacle to see.
Really, really interesting. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not a bad calendar. They need to get rid of a couple races and basically see if they can make space for Kyalami in 2024.
I mean, I'll ask you the question: what's your ideal number of races that you'd have in a calendar then?
So 19 or 20.
19 or 20?
19 or 20. I mean, to be fair, they can get rid of 4 races. Like we keep saying, Abu Dhabi needs to be removed. Someone needs to drop a nuke on that. I hate Abu Dhabi that much,
Innit?
by the way.
Money speaks.
And then you got China needs to be removed, Qatar needs to be removed, and possibly one more. And controversial Monaco has to be removed from the calendar.
I think Monaco's only there for qualifying for the sake of the heritage.
It just
Yeah,
has to
but
be
the
there
fact
'cause-
is that
We haven't got a good Monaco qualifying even for the last
Yeah.
few years because
because
the teams keep crashing.
Crashing.
yeah, because the thing is Monaco, the track doesn't work for F1.
Yeah, they're too big
Right.
now.
2, the venue's not big enough. because Monaco's not a big country. You're literally running across the entire country, and the infrastructure's not there, and the ACM is not going to do anything, and Monaco's not going to do anything.
Did you see like the news about it? The hospitality of the Monaco fans.
Yeah. Oh, we don't. If we talk about hospitality, we talk about Monza.
Oh my god.
Monza was unbelievable. People were literally
Queuing
like
up for water and everything.
they couldn't get water and everything. It was a bit. What was it? It was like. It was almost a bit like that fire festival a few years ago.
I've just had a look at the weather forecast for Austin, and my prediction is not coming true.
Go on then.
0% for the entire weekend. So we are not getting
Thank you.
We're in Texas.
Yeah, but we do sometimes get hurricanes. So.
Every now and then.
That would be something.
What was it, 2015?
Yeah.
There was the hurricane?
Oh, is that when they moved
Yeah.
qualified to like Sunday?
Yeah.
No, I think the more I actually look at the calendar, the less I'm unhappy with it. I think too many. I'd say 22 is quite a good number for races.
Like 21 races I'd be happy with.
Yeah. Well,
at least there's no France, to be fair.
Yeah.
I don't know why people complain about France not being in the calendar. There's no good track in France at the moment, really. I mean, Magny-Cours was there, but...
Magny-Cours was not good. People reminisce about... People have a nostalgia glasses on for Magny-Cours. Whenever you look back at a race at Magny-Cours, it was not a classic.
No.
It was just nostalgia goggles that meant everyone wanted to go back to Magny-Cours, but no.
You look at all the tracks that in France he got for the current F1 cars, none of them work.
Dijon.
Huh?
Dijon.
Yeah.
That's not a grade one by any means.
No. So I think really, in reality, I'm just happy it's not there. There's no real reason why it should be there now. I mean, yes, you got the heritage. The first ever Grand Prix was in Po in 1901, I believe. But you know, it is what it is. Thrown into the calendar is there. We got tracks that we want to be there, and don't forget Hockenheim. We always want Hockenheim back.
Hockenheim back. What a track!
But unfortunately, sponsorship and money is always a problem.
Yeah.
Money talks. I don't think we'll expect it back anytime soon. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, it is what it is. I guess there's only really one major piece of news that we haven't really talked about, and it's Audi, Porsche, and Andretti. Three kind of separate situations, but obviously we now know that Audi will be entering into F1 from 2026 onwards with at least as an engine supplier for the time being, but they are tipped. It is very highly rumoured that they're looking to buy at least Sauber, because I think Alfa Romeo have they announced that
they're officially
they're going to
Sauber,
leaving at end of 24. I believe so.
It's finally the VW group. It's finally entering for. It's been a rumour for as long as I can be. As long as I've been a fan of F1, you always have the rumours of one of them will enter F1, and now they have. I mean, it makes sense. The VW group's the biggest, arguably one of the most biggest and prestigious car companies in the world. At least
is Mercedes not part of the VW group?
Not that I'm... No.
Because they're a completely separate company. The big three are BMW, Volkswagen and Mercedes. They're the big three German manufacturers.
In Audi?
Huh?
No, so
Audi's owned by VW. That's what we're talking about, VW group, because we had two divisions of the VW group looking to enter F1. Audi, we are talking about right now, who are the ones who are successfully entering the new 26 regulations. I mean, if those of you don't know, the 26 regulations basically just means they're keeping the 1.6 V6 engines, but they're dropping the MGUH, and they're increasing the power outage of the MGUK.
Oh, just chuck some more cylinders on those engines.
I know.
Bring back the V8.
Oh no, yeah.
Make it a 1.6 litre. Make it a 4 litre hybrid V12. Let's have some fun.
The heaviest cars in existence.
No, I think it makes sense. Audi have a vast history in motor racing, obviously rallying with the Quattro. They did exceptionally well in Le Mans or the World Endurance Championship over the last few years. This announcement has put pay to, I think, them going back to Le Mans, but obviously VW Group's got Porsche, and they've got the new 963 or 2.
Something I can't remember.
It's the new,
There's a new
the
Porsche.
new Porsche hypercar. This is going to upset me if I don't.
992.
Hang on, let me find out. But no, I think it makes a lot of sense that they would enter F1 now, and then I think or not now, but with the new engine regs. That's the thing. That's what they were waiting for, and that's what they've clearly got.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. We also talk about Porsche as well because we've known those big rumors.
963.
Yeah, 963.
There we go.
I mean, you had the rumours for the last year or two with Porsche looking to at least collaborate with Red Bull, and it was a couple of months ago we had some papers were released from Morocco that Porsche will get full 50% stake in Red Bull, in the Red Bull technologies themselves, but then that deal has pretty much not worked out, and now the deal is not going ahead. I mean, would you be happy with Porsche taking over 50% of Red Bull?
I feel like if you look at it from Red Bull's perspective, it didn't make any sense to give up half of their equity in their overall company, considering at the end of the day, if Porsche were to come in, what kind of technical backing would they give? They'd give monetary backing, of course, but I feel like Red Bull and Honda have such a synergy at the moment. I don't feel the need to kind of break that in the first place. I think for Red Bull it was more of widening their market, reaching their horizons, rather than actually employing them on as a competitive partner. Whereas I feel like when you contrast that to Alfa Romeo and Audi, it seems very much likely that Audi are kind of coming in and testing the waters with how the engine and stuff's going to work, kind of gathering the intel, if you will, of how an ongoing Formula 1 team is run before kind of releasing their own full-fledged team. So I think Porsche was always more of an advertisement, whereas Audi, I think, are going to be the real deal when it comes to a team entering the sport.
Yeah. I mean, and also with Porsche and Audi, do you think Audi would have a lot of pressure coming in? Because we've had history of manufacturers jumping in past, namely Honda, and just coming with all these resources, money, history and technology, but just failing, really, or at least taking a ridiculously long time to become successful. And Audi have already put down the foot, saying that they want to be competitive in 3 years. What do you think are the realistic chances of that?
I mean, F1 is the pinnacle of motorsport, and there is a reason for that, and that is because of the amount of work and technical regulation and work that goes into the engines and the cars. And I think it is really difficult for a new manufacturer like Audi to come in and then instantly pick it up. But I think that's why they simplified the engines for 2026 and removed the MGU-K, was it? H. So then that has made it easier for new entrants to come in, which I think was one of the key requirements for Audi coming in. So I feel like it will take time, but I do think that with their technical resources and financial backing, I think they will eventually get there, but I think it might be a rough couple of years to begin with.
Yeah, and especially with Audi looking to buy into Sauber, they're going to buy into pretty much an existing base in Switzerland. So, I mean,
did the Audi news happen after the Porsche deal collapsed?
Yeah, I think the Porsche deal collapsed first, and then Audi revealed their car.
It was around the same time anyway.
I think there was a bit of I've got a small theory that if the Porsche deal had gone through, I don't think we would have seen the Audi deal, because it just doesn't I don't see how it would make sense for the VW Group to chuck 2 of their manufacturers into the sport, because if they've always been so against being in the sport in the first place, I don't see that they would have done both of them. But we did see Audi come in, we didn't see Porsche, and to be honest, with Porsche being in WEC and hypercars, it makes sense for Audi to go into F1 to sort of just cover all your bases with your subsidiary manufacturers.
I mean, I guess that makes sense, but I think because the 2 newses were announced so within a very short amount of time of each other, I think if we are going to go down that route, then surely both Porsche and Audi would have been having ongoing talks and it was more like if you were suggesting like if one team went in, then it would kind of be like the other one like had to pull out, so like simultaneously working on 2 deals at the same time.
Either that or the Porsche deal was collapsing a lot sooner
and they just didn't want to announce
than we knew.
Yeah, because especially like with Red Bull being an independent team, they don't really want to like give it to a mainstream manufacturer. Especially like, you look at the big 4 teams really 4 even 5 teams really with Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren and Alpine. Red Bull is the only person or team is actually not a manufacturer-backed team. It is completely independent. They make everything themselves, except for the engine, obviously, which is built in security by Honda and given to them. But the fact that they're now going to at least co-develop
Red Bull powertrains,
their new engines for 2026 is a pretty impressive feat. Especially like the primary aim of the Red Bull team is advertising the drink. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so. I mean, I think the main part of it is they didn't want to give so much control to Porsche, then they ended up like having to go to Germany, meeting all these, middle management execs who have to tell them what to do, portray an image. And I think like Red Bull in itself, as an independent like racing company, is much more free-flowing like management structure. And I feel like bringing Porsche into it wouldn't fit their like philosophy.
Yeah, and probably just speaking into refusal of bringing companies or manufacturers in with Andretti, because we've had a lot of talk with Andretti in the last few months as well, especially they've been really adamant to really bringing the first properly fledged American team into the sport with all that heritage with Andretti and stuff like that. They've done really well in IndyCar and NASCAR and stuff like that. So
this one's been a really odd one to me. It's just like it makes so much sense for them to join the sport, and it's not like previous teams that have tried to join where they've not had the resources or the capabilities. Like they've got all the IndyCar. I think they're pledging to build a huge factory in the UK. It just makes sense for them to go, and I think maybe that is part of the reason. Maybe the other teams are a bit like scared that they would do well, but if I was in F1 management, I'd be having them in straight away, because that's your American market coming in. Andretti is such a well-known name in American motor racing. It's probably, you talk about the dynasty, like they don't have a royal family, so they have family like dynasties, obviously politics like Clinton, the Trumps, things like that. The American dynasty in at least IndyCar, maybe not so much in NASCAR, but you've probably got Piastri and you've got Andretti as the drivers. Michael, Mario, there's another one, but I can't remember who it is, but they have always been in the sport, and it makes so much sense, or in my eyes it would make so much sense for F1 to have them in it, because you can watch IndyCar. Realistically, F1 is on in the mornings in America, IndyCar's on in the afternoons. If you're a motorsport fan, in America you just do that. You'd wake up for F1, have a few hours to do whatever you wanted to on a Sunday, and then you'd sit down and watch the IndyCar as well.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. I guess when you look at it from that standpoint, it is kind of a no-brainer when you look at it from that scenario. But let me play the devil's advocate for a minute and say, F1 is the pinnacle of motorsport, right? And I feel like the whole reason it is that is because of the exclusivity of it. So I feel like, say all 3 deals had gone through and they'd all ended up being independent manufacturers themselves. That is then a 13-team grid. 26 seats are then available. In some aspects, it's broadening the sport. In other aspects, it could be seen as, the whole point of F1 is the top upper tier echelon of drivers make it. It's a cruel sport. If you don't make it, then, it's tough luck. It's hailed as being the pinnacle of motorsport, right? So the more opportunities that are given, is F1 going to be seen as, kind of losing that exclusivity that it already has, is the small point that I would argue against it.
I think 22 is the perfect number to have on the grid, so maybe it's a bit different, but it just makes, in my eyes, it makes sense, and I'm curious as to why it's never really got off the ground. in terms of actually being viable.
And I think it's good that like the new teams that are entering, that they will be competitive more than I think the current grid. Like Haas and Williams, it's like
coming in at a time of the cost cap and everything with the smaller regulations.
And especially, F1 is like most of the sports now. The F1 is also a business, as well as the motorsport. You got the whole business aspect of it, and I think that's why Toto Wolff in particular was massively against it, because if you're going to get an extra team on the grid, the FIA is not really going to increase the prize money that much. So every team is going to be getting a smaller cut of that prize money, which basically means a smaller profit.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that's possibly the biggest reason why a lot of the big teams, especially Mercedes, are against it, because at the end of the day, the F1 teams want to make money out of it as well as actually, doing
the actual spectacle of racing,
the spectacle itself. So
maybe they'll change their mind now they're not winning, and Red Bull get less money.
But then you also got the other aspect. Andretti, like Will said, it's all about the American market. If you're going to really expand that market, aren't you going to be making more money in that respect anyway? So it's going to even out, and in a way, all the teams will either be making the same amount of money or making even more money. You're expanding the market of the sport.
Like
and
growing
making
the
sport.
pie, having a small share of the pie, but it's a bigger pie.
Yeah.
Well, have to wait and see.
Yeah, at this point, I think it's down to Stefano Domenicali to kind of... I think he's the right leader to make the choice, but I also think he needs to fix a lot of ingrown, rooted problems within the sport of Formula 1, the FIA in particular.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's all good and well expanding the horizons of the sport and trying to increase the outreach and promote the actual business aspect of it. But if it's done on a foundation that isn't steady in the first place, how attractive is it going to be for new teams coming in? So I think it's a crucial point for the sport at this point to try and iron out those creases, which at the end of the day is only going to help increase the overall reach of its sport in the end of the day.
Yeah.
Cool. There's not really much more to really say on that. He just kind of said the point I was going to say just there as well. So, let's just hope that Audi do well in the sport. We don't know what the real penalty will be with the cost cap, but
disqualification. Please.
Riots in the streets.
I want to see a Lewis
2021, 2022
eighth title might be a bit delayed. Does that count? I feel like that counts as a win. I think he can keep his record if he wins, if he technically wins the 8th title this year.
Let's be honest, no matter what the result of anything is, the one group of people that won't be happy is F1 Twitter.
F1 Twitter
It's going to explode no matter what the penalty is. Whether it's going to be a major penalty or minor penalty, either side is just going to explode. And
we thought like last season couldn't get more controversial.
I always like to think about it this way: why don't Netflix can just build the entire Drive to Survive season off F1 Twitter?
Oh, there better be a Drive to Survive episode about this. Because Drive to Survive this year is going to be boring. I don't even watch Drive to Survive that much. But it's going to be boring this year because nothing has happened.
Because Max is just...
He just dominated every race.
But the episode of Ferrari is always funny.
There's always going to be one like double trouble, like danger in red.
I bet you half the season's going to be about
Ferrari flopping.
And we'll be back next week to do COTA. Circuit of the Americas.
Oh yeah.
Very American.
Where Red Bull will have won the constructors title.
And we're going to be
none of us predicted that. I should have gone for that one.
Well, because it's that obvious.
Wouldn't have counted. But no, we'll talk about COTA. Hopefully it's an interesting race and not a Max Verstappen romping to a half-a-year victory.
Yeah.
The Latifi podium, that's all I'm saying.
Oh my gosh.
Don't forget celebrity interviews. We're going to probably talk about some... hopefully
Jay-Z's going to come up.
I just want Shaq back. It was such a missed opportunity last year that we did not see Shaq stand next to Yuki Tsunoda.
Lewis Hamilton was a pretty big one.
Lewis Hamilton was smaller than him, despite the fact Lewis Hamilton was on a podium.
Who decided to put Shaq on
next
the
to Lewis
podium during the
Hamilton.
national anthem? It's just-
I love Shaq.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
He's a great
But,
guy.
But yeah, we'll be back next week to talk about that, I'm sure.
yep, definitely.
That will be a fun one.
Yep. And so, yeah, thank you to Sailesh, Ini,
Yeah.
and obviously.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it was
It's been a pleasure.
It was a
And
blast.
yeah, I will see you next week with Will on the hosting chair for the US Grand Prix,
Yes.